Welcome back to Out of Touch. John, Dustin, and Mitchell with you once again. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be listening or watching us. Spotify, YouTube, and coming soon to Apple Podcasts. I'm going to get that taken care of here, hopefully before, this is episode 28, and hopefully by episode 30, I'm going to take care of putting everything on Apple Podcasts. That's a weird goal to have. It's not really a goal. That's more of honestly just like an OCD thing of mine. Just like giving myself something that's like a round number, if you will. And, that's my deadline. So for those of you who maybe watch on YouTube, but you prefer to listen to audio only on Apple Podcasts, that'll be coming soon if you are somebody who frequents Apple Podcasts or Apple Music. So
how hard is that to do? And hello, everyone, by the way.
That's right. That's Mitch Mitchell joining us from Detroit, Michigan today. He's been in Grand Rapids the past couple of weeks. And next week, you told us you're going to be in New York. And you may or may not be on next week's episode, but you are a rambling man, Mr. Page.
I try to be. At the end of last week, we were in Traverse City, too. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Traverse City, Michigan.
Traverse City.
Unbelievable spot. Even when it's a little chilly, I can't imagine what it's going to be like in the summer. I'm really excited.
Do you know what kind of blows my mind a little bit? This has nothing to do with anything, by the way.
That's the podcast. What is the goal of this podcast? There really isn't a goal for now.
It always amazes me that it feels like we've been doing this podcast for a long time, which we have, but that we're only on episode 28.
Well, think about it like this, because if we do it once a week, there's 52 weeks in a year. I mean, once we get to a year, 52 episodes, it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. But in the grand scheme of things, there's podcasts that have 400 or 500 plus episodes. Maybe, I don't know how long the Joe Rogan podcast has been going on. I know that's kind of like the standard bearer for podcasts, I feel like. But that's we're not going to achieve that, but that's a number. Sure.
I love the comparison. Let's just compare us to the number one worldwide podcast in the history of podcasts.
That's a good Joe Rogan listener, Mitchell. I bet you're a Joe Rogan listener. No.
I listen to clips that I see when there's people that I like on the show.
Same.
And I've seen before, and I don't listen to Joe Rogan. Again, I'm kind of like you. If I see people I like, I'll listen to a couple of clips. But I've seen posts where an entire interview with somebody, I believe he did an interview with Post Malone that was 6 hours long. Who can talk to anybody for 6 hours at a time? Sometimes I feel like when we push the 1 hour mark on this show that we've talked for a long time.
Well, none of us are interesting, I think, is the problem. They actually have interesting stuff to say. Imagine talking to Post Malone about his superstardom and the way he started in Dallas. Do you guys remember Luke Timian?
Yeah, wide receiver, walk on.
Yeah, he grew up in the same area as Post Malone and knew him before he got famous when he uploaded White Iverson to SoundCloud. And everyone was like, who is this guy? He's weird. Obviously, you saw the videos he used to make in high school, just a different dude. But they had met each other in passing. And when White Iverson started exploding, he just kind of stayed the same dude, which imagine posting something on SoundCloud, it being on there for a long time. It didn't get popular for a year. Blows up. He makes all these world famous albums, and then he just moves to Utah and shuts out everyone. That's quite the life.
It is quite the life. And White Iverson, fantastic song, by the way. And I think it's funny if you compare that song to what he does now. I don't even think he sounds like the same musician. If that's, he's a musician, but he's more of a rapper. He's kind of a do-it-all, honestly. He's not just a stereotypical hip-hop artist, if you will.
Yeah, he kind of, and I think this is probably true in a lot of jobs. When you're first starting, you have to do stuff that you think other people will like. And as you get better at it and people start to respect you a little bit, you start to do things that you like. And if other people like it too, that's just an added bonus. So especially in artists, you see it right in front of your face. It's happening. But I think that happens to a lot of artists. They just morph into just doing the kind of stuff that they like instead of the White Iverson sound. And I think he probably likes that song because it blew him up, but it is way different.
No, Dustin, for some reason I thought you had a comment. I was looking at you.
Oh, that was so much
dead
tough.
I wish there was a way to I don't know, click on your little window to make me think that I think you're going to say something next if I don't know where the directions go.
How many people do you think listening to this audio only are going to check their phone to see like, wait, what just happened to my phone? Why
well,
did it stop?
Sometimes if I realize there's a long pause, which doesn't really happen very often basically in my day-to-day life, whether it be this show, my afternoon show, or the morning show that I work on, if I know there's a long pause, I take note of it for the post-production and usually remove that
you just
long
cut
pause.
it down. That's a producer right there.
I know who Post Malone is, and I listen to his music when I'm in the gym, but I don't know like anything about his life. I also, so you said you think it would be tough to talk to somebody for like 3 to 6 hours, but
that's a long range, by the way.
It is a long range.
Yeah,
going double time. But do you remember, like, I'm sure when you first started talking to your wives, right? Like you could have those type of really long conversations because you were engaged and because you thought that other person was interesting. Think about the people he talks to all the time. Like all of them have a story. All of them are very interesting. So when you are engaged and when you have somebody to talk to that is providing interesting content, as opposed to me, who's like, what did you do today? I ate chicken, I went to the gym, and I worked for 10 hours, and that was my life. Like,
and that's true, and that's why we're going to do the added guest element stuff, and not just the music stuff that I've been working on, but bring on actual other human beings who do different things on here, whether they're interesting or not. It'll be interesting just to talk to. And when I say I hope they're interesting, but like we don't have the ability to pull a Post Malone. You know, we get 30 to 40 viewers / listeners per episode. But
all three know Chris Denary. I think we should get Chris on the show to talk about.
Chris is the man.
We can talk about Pacers basketball. We don't have to talk about Pacers basketball. Mitchell and I would love that. But that's just.
I think we talk about the Guerin Catholic High School basketball team from 2011. That's what I think we.
One that you were on.
Do you guys remember? I played with his son in high school, and my mom dated his. Shout out, my mom dated his older brother or younger brother when she was in high school. They went to high school together. I've known Chris forever.
He told me that story. He also told me, by the way, for people who don't know, Chris Denary is the TV play-by-play guy for Valley Sports, the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah.
He also told me this was a cool story, a cool connection. I don't know how this was brought up, but we started talking about you, Mitchell. And he was on the call for your first collegiate touchdown. So there's also that special connection.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah, he told me that story. The last
FIU on a bubble screen from like the 12-yard line.
So we got to pull that sound up whenever we have Chris Denary on.
He gives a great call. It's like it just is sentimental to me. I can
for many reasons
just hear his voice. It was awesome. It was really, really cool. I got sent that clip by everybody after it happened. It was just a really cool that he got to what a small world, full circle deal.
Yeah.
Been playing with his son since sophomore year of high school, and look at us now. Now we're all old.
Well, if you think you're interesting, give us a shout at 502-830-9195. Or even if you aren't interesting, just like all three of us, send us a message. Shout out to all the people who sent in messages about the bad jobs. That was an interesting episode. Really, a couple of episodes that we did the past few weeks. And really appreciate those of you who gave us a call. And look forward to doing more stuff like that in the future. Also, in the future, if you want to leave us a message, or if you have left us a message, make sure that you have a direction that you want us to go, because we've gotten messages in the past where you're just kind of saying something, and that's fine. But if we don't know how to react to it, I usually screen these calls. I don't always do that, but if I have screened it and I don't know which direction we're going to take it, there's a good chance I'm not going to put it in the podcast, and that's that's totally fine. But just for future reference, if you're going to send us a message, 502-830-9195. That is, I guess, a little piece of instruction, if you will.
Little guidance.
That's right.
Mitchell's now got his head in his hands.
Yeah, this is something
happening right now. Is he's watching the Indiana basketball game against Ohio State. I don't know what happened, but it wasn't good.
Yeah, this is something that's happening right now. They've fought all the way back to get down 8. And there's 11 minutes left in the game, and Khalil Ware just got his 4th foul.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm glad to decide not to watch Indiana basketball tonight because here's what I've learned. I love sports. I love Indiana. I love college sports. I love Indiana specifically. And I'll watch pro sports too, but not so much. I'm not as emotionally invested into a pro sports team the way I am with the Indiana Hoosiers. But here's what I've learned over the years is that I've experienced, and again, I know I'm younger than both of you. I've experienced emotional heartbreak from a fan standpoint to where once I realize I'm at a certain threshold, now I have to just step back and I can't watch because I know it's just going to put me in a headspace that I don't want to be in.
I wish I had that restraint. I feel like I could save myself so much pain and anguish. But at the same time, it's why you love it. Because then when your team is triumphant.
It is.
God,
Here's like it's one thing to be heartbroken and you have a really good team. But it's another thing to just realize your team's terrible and why waste your time.
Do you know, okay, so we talked about interesting people. I'm not interesting at all. But what did happen this past week was watching Mitchell's reactions, first of all, is just hilarious to me.
We are so bad.
But
oh, my gosh.
So I was able to cover the Indiana-Penn State game live, which I've covered multiple football games in my career, but that was the first live basketball game I've covered that I remember. And what was crazy, I'm not going to go dive into this too much, but just what was crazy to me was I was like next to Khalil Ware, and that dude's 7 foot. And that is that's a giant. Like he plays for the Monstars on Space Jam. And then I thought, Zach Edey somehow is 5 inches taller than Khalil Ware. And I don't know how that's possible.
He's way heavier. He is way bigger than Khalil Ware.
I am
way bigger.
I will be at the Purdue Indiana game on Saturday.
That's Saturday?
Yes.
Oh, it is Saturday. Yep.
And I don't know, like, I'm going to be awestruck. I think, like, when you talk to enough people and done enough of this stuff, you're very seldom are you starstruck or awestruck by what you see. But I think he's just going to be such a massive human being that it's just like, I don't know. I don't even know how you compare this. Like, how tall he has to be, I can't even wrap my head around.
You could
real quick before we move forward,
each other twice.
You seem very upset by the fact that Purdue and Indiana is a Saturday. Why is that?
Because I'm watching us tonight. Like, what?
Okay.
We have to go to Purdue. We have 0 good players. So
you guys should have heard some of the things.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Yeah, we're gonna move away from this.
This is a bad idea to watch.
Move into things.
We're somehow only down 9 points. How bad must Ohio State be?
They're not good. 2 bad teams playing. But
that is
horrible. All right. In the news today, recording this on February 6th, Tuesday, February 6th. But overnight, last night, country singer, icon, legend, whatever you want to call him, Toby Keith passed away in his sleep. And it caught me by surprise. I'll say that first. He's one of those people, like, I knew he was sick. I knew a couple of years ago he had that cancer diagnosis, but he's kind of, even though it's been public information, it was never really like, I guess there wasn't a warning that, his death was coming, if that makes any sense. His most recent show was, I believe, this past December 13th or 14th. And if you've seen any of his performances in the past year or so, I mean, he doesn't look like the same Toby Keith. I mean, he didn't necessarily look like he was dying, but he was a lot thinner than he had used to be. But I loved a lot of, I won't say I was a big fan of his necessarily, but I do love the vibe of his songs and a lot of his older style of music as compared to his newer songs, where I guess like the 90s mullet style Toby Keith. That's more of my jam. And I feel like a lot of people like that era more so than the newer Toby Keith in general. But so last night, my wife and I were out to dinner and at a steakhouse, Longhorn Steakhouse. Sometimes, a little side note real quick. I know I kind of get to rambling sometimes, but what I've learned from being in the radio business, I've learned to not say like brand names. You're told not to say a brand name unless they like sponsor you or whatever, which obviously we don't have any sponsors on this podcast. So like I felt hesitant to say
Steakhouse as our new sponsor.
I know, exactly. So I felt hesitant to say that I went to Longhorn Steakhouse, which who gives a crap, right? Anyway, so my wife and I were at Longhorns last night, and normally when you're at restaurants, even if it's not Longhorns, it could be anywhere. You'll hear music playing in the background while you're eating, just as like ambient music, that kind of stuff. The very last song that I heard playing was My List by Toby Keith, which is probably my favorite of his songs. And I point out to my wife, I'm like, oh, this is a great Toby Keith song. And I started singing a little bit to myself like an idiot. And then we got up and left, and and that was that. But then you wake up and you see the news that he passes away. That's just a weird connection to have hours before something like that comes about. So I just wanted to share that story because I thought it was interesting.
That's awesome.
I think there's things that happen like that all the time, and you don't know what is happening in that moment, but you go back and you just like, oh, maybe that, I don't know. There was a lot of stuff I read in the last month that it was like I had read more about Toby Keith like performing in the last 3 or 4 months than I had in maybe the last like 10 years. And I don't know, it seemed like you said, John, I think he performed in Vegas in December, and he had talked about like wanting to get back and do a full show and do a full tour. That was his goal. And unfortunately, he doesn't get to, obviously passed away before he could do that. But he was, he was still fighting and wanted to accomplish big things, even though he was obviously really, really sick. So it's just, sometimes life's funny like that, man.
So he had stomach cancer and, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mitchell.
No, I didn't realize what he had. I didn't even know he was sick, but
he's very quiet about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just is reminding me of what I was saying. And I didn't listen to some of his newer stuff, so maybe it is exactly in line with the Post Malone play the hits that people like and then play what you like. Maybe he followed that same trajectory, but there may not be an artist in history that played to the crowd more than Toby Keith. He played to the Southern American man. That was it. If they liked his songs, he didn't care who else did. He played to them. All of his songs are absolute Southern country bangers. And I think that's so funny. He just is somebody in my mind that just always, he knew exactly what his niche was, and he went back to the well every time.
Do you know who I think also fits that category? Would be John Mellencamp. Tell me if I'm wrong on that.
Agree.
So I've not listened to a lot of John Mellencamp, but I'm very aware of him being an Indiana guy. That's about the
he's just very
extent of him.
He's just very Americana, blue collar type, just connects very well with Midwestern people. So I
was gonna say Midwest. Yeah. If Toby Keith was hitting the South,
John Mellencamp's Midwest.
It felt like he was just a Midwest, Ohio to Missouri. These are my people, and I'm just gonna play to them.
Right.
So Toby Keith, he had 21 studio albums. That is a lot of music.
That is
so when I say 90s era versus like the newer era, so I heard somebody say this today, and I may butcher the way that it was spoken. But obviously his 90s era was almost like classic, like you said, blue collar country, that type of stuff, where when you get later in his career, it was more like he was saying like, oh, I'm going to shove my foot up your ass, that kind of stuff. Like he was kind of like the badass kind of country. And
there may have been after 2001, dude. He played to America after September 11th. All of I think his probably next 3 albums after September 11th were about America being the best country on the planet.
Yeah, so you had Unleashed, Shockin' Y'all, Honky Tonk University. Those are the ones that came out the years after 9/11. And I do believe I don't have all the track lists in front of me. But
courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue was the American
year
national
after 9/11.
Anthem. Yeah, it was the American national anthem for 5 years.
Yep.
Who's Your Daddy? Which, who's your daddy? If we're going to stay in, I know it has nothing to do with that, but people like that because of
I like it. I like the reach.
And then and this is when it really turned. Beer for My Horses. I Love This Bar, American Soldier, that kind of stuff. I think Beer for My Horses, that's the first time he really dipped into almost like I don't want to say a silly song because that makes it sound childish, but like a song where like the meaning of it is just kind of out there. Like there's like, go ahead.
Not very childish.
That and I Love This Bar.
But then you got you go even further down and you've got like Red Solo Cup.
phenomenal song.
You got Wacky Tobacco, a song about smoking marijuana and baking them in some brownies, that kind of stuff.
Wait, didn't he have a song that was titled "I'll Never Smoke Weed with Willie Again"?
Weed with Willie is what it's called. So
yeah, he played to his people.
Yep, he did. Mitchell nailed that right on the head.
Yeah, he played to his audience, and they bought 21 CDs, and then listened on Spotify. And once that came out, yeah, that's understanding where your market is and milking it for everything it's got.
Do you know what's going to
give him a lot of credit?
What's going to be interesting, and I don't mean this in like a I don't know, shallow type of way, but I think it will be interesting to see like what his Spotify numbers look like in the next month.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when these sort of things happen, everybody just wants to go and listen to that music for whatever that period of time is. 1 week, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure his like Spotify, all that stuff is going to just soar.
Yeah, it's a shame that it happened a day after, and not that I watched the Grammys, but it's a shame that this didn't happen. I mean, I guess it's always a shame when somebody dies in general, so I guess it doesn't matter when it was, but
I didn't even think about it that way, but it's way funnier to think about it that way. Like, oh, what a shame. Wish he would have died next week.
Could have died a couple days sooner. They could have given him a tribute at the Grammy Awards.
Oh.
Did you guys, this is a harsh cut. Toby Keith, RIP. Some of my favorite memories are listened to.
Yeah, we'll move forward.
Did you see the performance of Luke Combs and Tracy Chapman, Fast Car?
I didn't watch it, but I heard it was probably the best part of the Grammys.
I got literal goosebumps watching it.
And it's a she, right? Tracy Chapman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. You can't tell some days. She hasn't performed in like a decade, and people were saying that Luke Combs ripped it off or whatever and wasn't giving credit to her enough. And then for her to come out there, I just thought it was super powerful and was a really, really cool moment I didn't watch a second, but I saw it on Twitter.
I had heard, and I don't know if this is true, and maybe this is something I should Google before I open my mouth, but I had heard she hasn't like toured in like 10 years or something.
That's what I'm saying. Hasn't been on stage in a decade.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then she comes out for that.
Can you imagine not performing for a decade? Not like that's like you not playing football for 10 years and then suiting up for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Kind of what I did in Austria, to a much smaller scale. And that was only 3 years. Like how fast everything changed in my body. I can't imagine.
Right.
Because it's hard to go up there. It takes a lot of energy, mentally, physically. And I know it's just one song, but that's a lot if you haven't done it in a long time. I don't care who you are. You're way out of practice. She was probably nervous.
And it's not like you're doing it on like a small scale. Like this is like
the Grammys.
Biggest event. Yeah.
Well, shout out to the Grammys. Shout out to Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs, and rest in peace to Toby Keith. Let's go ahead and move into. We haven't done this in a couple weeks. Colorado town names. We're adding a new element to it this week, potentially. So last time we did this, we decided we were going to potentially try out doing a punishment for, an in-show punishment for the loser between Dustin and Mitchell. And I'm not going to reveal what that punishment will be unless we have a loser. But we'll see how it goes. But again, we've got 4 sets of town names, two apiece. And last week or 2 weeks ago, Mitchell was our first person to get one wrong.
Thank you for reminding me.
Maybe
he can remind himself. I was going to remind everybody if he didn't.
Yeah, I was going to remind everyone because I knew you two idiots were thinking about it. So
that's right.
It's fine. Hoosiers are only down 5, by the way.
Wow.
Do what? Hoosiers? Oh, yeah. So are we getting in the nitty-gritty of this game?
Yes, 5.5 minutes left. So
I really hope that something happens to where you have like a knee-jerk reaction where you just kind of freak out and you don't realize you're going to freak out on
positive or negative. Preferably
either or. I'd be for either one at this point.
Sometimes my emotions get the best of me, and I black out.
That happens to all of us.
Yeah, I told you guys about my football watching. It doesn't happen as much in basketball, especially with this team, because I have no expectations of any positive thing happening ever. But I'm starting to believe, which is a dangerous place. It's very dangerous.
All right, let's go ahead and do this. Dustin, you're going to be up first. We've got, and this is for Colorado, we've got disease or hygiene.
Oh, man.
I know the answer.
Do you really?
Oh, real quick. So don't give the answer, but have you been to the real place that's on that, between these two, Mitchell?
Yeah.
Okay. Dustin, I'm glad I didn't give this to Mitchell then.
Disease or hygiene? I'm going to go with hygiene.
That's correct. Mitchell, when have you been to Hygiene, Colorado?
I never have. That was a lie. I just wanted to put pressure on Dustin.
Oh, man. He did seem more
nervous
after the fact.
Yeah, no, I have no idea where that is.
You played probably Tiger Woods golf on like PlayStation or Xbox?
Of course.
Do you remember that button you could press when somebody was putting and you just could say no pressure like 874 times?
Yes, no pressure. I know this one. This one's easy.
That's what that was
so
like.
So the name,
would someone name you think about it, disease is a wild name for a town.
Exactly.
If you name your town that. Like, we've had a lot of people dying. I got a good idea.
Well, speaking of dying, so the Hygiene, Colorado was originally named Pella, and the present name stems from a time when it had a sanatorium to work with tuberculosis patients. So that's why it's this along the same vein of what you're talking about, except it's a more positive, I guess, name than calling it disease. So
yeah, I like it.
Dustin gets 1 point. Moving on to Mitchell. This time we've got Old Roach or New Cricket.
Old Roach. Final answer.
Got to pull up my button. Which one am I going to click? He's correct.
Oh, nice.
Old Roach is a ghost town in northwest Larimer County.
Oh,
sorry. We're both talking
Red
at the
Redemption.
same time. It's my fault.
You're good. Sounds like Red Dead Redemption. That's why I went with it. You guys ever play that?
Does Red Dead Redemption, does that take place in Colorado?
I have no idea. I don't know if any of the towns I don't think any of the towns are real, but Old Roach just sounded like that, and that's what I was going with.
Okay.
Sounds like
nothing super fun about where this town came from, or at least its name, but it is apparently a ghost town in Colorado that used to be a logging city. So yeah, spooky. Speaking of spooky, we've got, this is for Dustin, Spook City or Ghostville.
Oh.
To me, both of those sound like bullshit, but apparently one of them is real.
Really? I think both of them sound very real. Okay, we got Spook City and Ghostville.
Yes, sir.
Golly. I'm going to go with Ghostville. Damn!
Incorrect. So Spook City, I have zero information on this town other than the fact that if you Google Maps it, it is a real place. It's about 3 hours from Colorado Springs, and it looks like it's in the middle of freaking nowhere. And there's no information about it other than where you can find it on Google Maps.
I got some information about the town.
Go ahead. Give us...
Idiot!
Well, when we talk about Google search, I'm going to interject really quick and just say that I didn't know. Apparently, there's a Nebraska, Indiana. How did I find this out? Because I was Googling the price of the Nebraska, Indiana basketball tickets, and I just put in Nebraska, Indiana, thinking it would pop up immediately. No, there is a township in Indiana somewhere, I don't know where, called Nebraska. There you go.
I meant to ask this earlier, Dustin. We were talking about talking for 3 to 6 hours, and you had mentioned our wives. Have you had long conversations with your significant other recently, like that lasted that long?
Oh yeah,
good start,
man.
I think
the days, man. I do not remember those times, but I know they happened.
Well, I guess
my wife and I have been together. Like we've been married for almost 4 years, but we've been together for nearly 9 or 10 years. Which again, that's.
Well, I think our first phone conversation was like a little over a year ago, but we talked for like 4.5, 5 hours. But we also were long distance, so we couldn't see each other all the time. But
that makes sense.
I just remember, like, that's when you learn so much about someone. So that's what, that's why I think when you're engaged and when you find the other person interesting, you can have those long conversations and it's not difficult. It just comes easy. I'm also trying to filibuster here to put as much pressure on Mitchell as humanly possible. Maybe the game gets into his mind a little bit. He misses his question.
Do you want me to do this with my eyes closed?
Well, how does that make a difference?
All right, the final two town names, and if Mitchell gets it correct, then Dustin is our loser, which which means he has to do the punishment that I've yet to say what it is. So
this was all a setup. I'm a sandbagger.
All right, here we go, Mitchell. We have foreplay or fair play.
Ooh. Just the changing of a few vowels here, Mitchell. Very important.
Not as confident in this one. Fair play, final answer.
Damn!
He's correct. Oh, all right, man.
Here we go. Edge of my
seat. Nothing super interesting about where the name comes from. So that one, unfortunately, no fun.
I kind of wish it was foreplay now, so we could have learned to wear.
Yeah, foreplay would have had a great description, surely. And yeah, so I feel bad punishing Dustin because last week Mitchell lost and he got off the hook because we didn't have a punishment ready.
That's what I'm saying. It's a sandbagger. I hustled you.
He is currently watching the Indiana basketball game. I feel like that's punishment in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm ready to hear this next punishment.
All right, so here's what we're going to attempt. And if this ends up being bad content, then maybe I'll cut it off the podcast altogether. But here's what I've come up with. So I've got a hip-hop beat set up, ready to roll. You've got to spit. You've got to spit 4 bars of a rap freestyle to this beat that I'm going to play. And I love the reaction.
This is phenomenal, John. This is your best stuff.
I am 100% on board with this. I don't know if I can come up with something. Can we like talk and do this later in the show so I can think about it?
Well, here's what we're gonna hear. This beat is pretty long. Here's what I'm gonna go ahead and give you the beat. I mean, if we want to push this towards the end of the show, that's fine. But here's what you have to work with, and it's gonna ease into where it actually kind of breaks down. So you have time to think about what you're going to say. How's volume on this, by the way, too? Is this loud or is this good volume?
Oh, my.
This is
what you're going to be spitting over for us, Dustin.
This is like some crazy.
You can't rap to this. This is R&B.
It's going to be like B-Rabbit in 8 Mile. Like,
yeah. Hey, I'm in 8 Mile, dude.
Yo.
All right, we're going to
get him for now. He's probably around us.
Okay, so I got to spit 4 bars of this.
That's a lot.
I got to think. Okay, yeah. I will totally do this. We've got to push it at least a little bit because I am not good at like off the top of my head rapping.
That's fine.
I'm not.
Again, I kept this a secret because I just wanted to see how it was going to work. And I'm first of all, I'm glad both of you are on board with the punishment. That means
country
makes me happy.
Or state, city names.
All because of town names. So I do have one more topic for us so we can get into if we want to go ahead and dive into that before we do that. Mitchell, are you glad you won today?
Yes. I'd be horrible. Horrible.
Can I tell you
the stakes just went through the roof. I couldn't come up with the word stakes just now, but the stakes of town names just
and here's what we're going to do for myself too to make it to where I can lose. If you all both get both of them correct, then
we're on a team. This is just me and Dustin teaming up again.
So, I have a slightly funny story. So this was way back in college. My friend who has called in before, Andy Hater 1, and I visited a friend at Western Illinois University. We went there on a Friday night. We went out on a Friday night. We shut down the bar. Before we shut down the bar, they had a rap battle contest, and the winner got like $250. We'd had so much to drink, but our friend had more to drink. We were able to convince him to go participate in this rap battle in hopes that he would win because he's very clever, very witty, he can come up with stuff off the top of his head like that. Hoping that we would be able to drink for free the entire weekend we were in Macomb, Illinois, or whatever the name of that town is.
Oh, yeah.
He lost in the first round of the rap battle, so we did not drink for free at all. I thought he did well. It was based on cheers. I tried to cheer as loud as I could. It didn't work. It didn't matter.
That's phenomenal.
So there you go. So Dustin, you'll close out the podcast with some bars underneath that beat we have, and that's what we're gonna do until it runs its course. So that'll be the punishment. So you guys need to come prepared if you don't want to freestyle it every week. You don't know what the beat's gonna be. But if you've got me 3 or 4 bars, I guess it needs to be 4 for it to make musical sense. But
can I make one suggestion?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm on board with this. I will do this. I got to think, but I will do it. I would come up with like 4 or 5 punishments, and then we can rotate.
Maybe do like a wheel. Have like a spinning wheel.
Yes, a wheel of punishments. That's a good idea. I like that. I feel like if we did the same one every time, it would get old and tiresome. So let's have a mix of what they will be.
Yeah.
And then we just spin the wheel each time. The loser spins the wheel.
But for today, John, this is your best stuff. This is so creative and so good.
I can't wait for Usher to discover me like he did Justin Bieber so many years ago.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
All right. Before we while we give Dustin time to think, which I don't know how he's going to be able to participate in this conversation while he's trying to think of what he's going to wrap.
I'm just writing down. This is like where my SEO background, which is search engine optimization, comes into play because I just write down keywords and then I'm going to try to rhyme them with one another.
I like it. Wisconsin and Mansion.
All right. So one other thing we're going to get into before we do this, JJ Watt put a video on Twitter today, and we're going to play what he was complaining about, and then we're going to get into kind of our thoughts on what he was talking about. So long story short, before I play what he said, he got kicked out of a hotel gym, and he wasn't too happy about it. So here's what JJ Watt put on his Twitter account.
So yesterday, near the end of the day, wanted to get a workout in. 6:30 p.m., go down to the hotel gym, put my AirPods in, get the workout going, get a nice lather. About 30 minutes in, somebody comes and taps me on the shoulder. So I take the AirPod out. I'm like, yes, what's up? I said, I'm sorry, sir, but we're closed. I said, what's closed? She said, the gym. The gym's closed. I said, it's 7 o'clock. What do you mean the gym's closed? She said, yeah, we close at 7 o'clock. I'm sorry. You got to get out. 7 o'clock? What hotel gym closes at 7 o'clock? What hotel? What's going to get stolen in a hotel gym? Is somebody going to walk out with a woodway? We're going to have 45-pound plates headed out the door? Maybe 9, midnight. But I mean, majority of hotel gyms, 24 hours. Just go in there, use a gym, clean up after yourself, get out. I mean, 7 o'clock. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Because I walked out of that gym with the sweat going, just kind of like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the idiot here. But I feel like that is a little early to be closing down your hotel gym.
So 7 o'clock, he got kicked out of his hotel gym. And Dustin, I know you commented on something that you didn't comment on this video directly, but you commented on, I guess, somebody else's comment. So I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah.
As somebody who, I guess, frequently works out. The way I just set that up.
Frequently gets the pump in. I do work out. I try to do something every day. Well, 5 or 6 days a week. I'm going to modify that. Okay. So our friend Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News, college basketball, bracketologist, great guy, incredibly smart, said most of his workouts are usually around like 11 o'clock when he's at a hotel. And I related with that because depending on the day, depending on the workload, depending on how tired I am, I will work out at any point between like 1:30 at night or 1:30 at night, 1:30 in the afternoon or 11 o'clock at night. Like it's just how my schedule works out. I will never be a morning workout person. I've tried. I cannot do it. So I am on JJ's side with this. By the way, what's not being talked about is, can you imagine being the hotel manager and having to tell JJ freaking Watt to get out of the gym? I'd let that pass.
That is
no whole idea thing. Who he was talking to.
Oh, you don't. We're talking about Zach Edey. Zach Edey's tall and large. JJ Watt would pick you up and squeeze your brain with his fingers, dude.
But here's the thing: if you
massive,
and we all know what kind of hotel he was in, obviously. But if you are somebody who is working in a hotel, do what?
He's not staying at the Town Place Suites that I'm staying at.
Right now. I mean, let's just say you are disconnected from the world of football or sports in general, and you just have no idea who he was. Like, who would have the balls to go up to him and tell him he has to leave? Because if I knew who it was, there's no way. I would just say, screw it, it's JJ Watt. He can come and go as he pleases.
Right.
I think that's the most important part of this whole thing is that some little worker, probably 18, goes in and taps 6'5", rocked up JJ Watt, NFL MVP JJ Watt, says, "Hey, dude, you got to get out." Like the confidence you have in yourself that he's not going to freak out. And I know he's a nice guy. He's Walter Payton Man of the Year, but come on.
And not to mention, like, let's pretend that this individual is not a sports fan and has no idea who JJ Watt is. You still have to go and tell this incredibly large human person to get out of the gym.
I think it's scarier if you don't know who JJ Watt is.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
If those people, let's just say they did, but they were all terrified. Maybe they were all having their little meeting or powwow behind the, the counter, like trying to decide who had to go tell JJ, like, hey, somebody's got to get him out of there.
I think the hotel front desk was having a game of guess this town name, and that was their punishment for losing.
Oh, man. So he actually left a poll on Twitter as well. It says, what time should a hotel gym close? And, well, I guess we'll collectively decide what it needs to be. 7 p.m., 9 to 10 p.m., midnight, or open 24 hours. I think there's only one correct answer, and that's open 24 hours. At a hotel, what is the point in putting any sort of time limit on when something like that should be closed down?
I stay in a hotels a bunch. So I've seen 6 p.m., I've seen 10 p.m., 12, and I've seen mostly 24 hours. Most of them are 24 hours. But it all depends on staffing. Because, yeah, you're not responsible for what happens in there, but if it's 11 p.m., you got the night crew, you have one person managing the entire hotel, and some guy that isn't JJ Watt tries to go in there and lift 100-pound dumbbells over his head and smashes his head. I just don't think the hotel is equipped with one manager to handle someone that's bleeding out in the gym while also making sure the hotel runs properly. So it's got to be, if you have the staffing, 24 hours is obvious, but it has to be some kind of staffing issue. I can't imagine that was the case where JJ Watt was, but at some of these places, like I'm staying in the middle of Nowheresville most of the time, there's only one person in the whole place at night. So it makes sense to close around 9 in that scenario, but other than that, I don't know of any hotel gyms that have weights over like 40 pounds for dumbbells. You have a treadmill in there, you've got an elliptical, a bike, and some dumbbells.
So I don't know. I'm sure that in downtown areas, there are more similar to these hotels, but the very first time I went to St. Louis, I stayed in a nice hotel. I can't remember what kind of hotel it was, but their gym was immaculate. Like, it was like an Anytime Fitness gym. Like, they had the complete set of dumbbells all the way up to 50 pounds. They had every machine you could ever want. They had not a Stairmaster. They had an elliptical. There are multiple ellipticals, multiple treadmills. Like, it was, and they had all the, whatever those things are called, the bungee cords and medicine balls. Like, it had everything you could ever imagine outside of like a squat rack and a bench press. So some of them do, but Mitchell's right. A lot of them, you just walk in and it's like, do you want to do the elliptical? Do you want to do the treadmill? Or do you want to lift these 8-pound dumbbells?
Yeah, on the yoga mat.
And I don't see JJ Watt walking into a gym that has the bare minimum and just saying this. He would just say, like, this is not for me. I'm going to show myself out.
JJ Watt scours hotels when he searches on like Expedia the way I look to see if, like, he searches for a gym the way I look to see if there's a free continental breakfast. Like, that is my number one most
it's a must thing. It's a must. I learned very quickly. I used to I was just kind of willy-nilly. I thought they all had, this is really just so stupid, but it's something I actively do now every time I'm looking. I used to just stay anywhere. I was a Hilton guy. So staying at like the cheap ones. One time I was in Myrtle Beach.
Oh,
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to splurge a little bit on the DoubleTree Hilton on the beach. It's like a business hotel. They've got 4 million conference rooms. Went down for the continental breakfast. To my surprise, the buffet was $25.
Oh my!
Whoa, really?
Yes, and that's the case at like every DoubleTree. So this is a PSA. Don't stay at DoubleTree.
Which is surprising because isn't that the one where they give out free cookies?
Oh, I'm a Diamond member, buddy. I get cookies every time.
He's a Diamond member.
I'm on the road so much. I'm very fortunate. That's a little perk of.
All right,
never
since we
being
don't
at
have
home.
a sponsor, give me your top 3 hotel chains.
I think there's only 2, Hilton and Marriott.
Okay. What about
We know
worst? Is it Super 8 or is it Motel 6 or is it Days
I've
Inn?
stayed in both. They're not as bad as you'd think.
No,
The
I
ones
stayed in a
that-
Super 8. And I'll let you finish, but yeah, go ahead. What were your?
The ones that are the worst are the extended stay places,
Mm-hmm.
like American Inn extended stay.
What? Now, what's so bad about those? I know what you're talking about, but what makes those terrible?
People are gross, and when you give them time in a certain place that isn't theirs, they're 10 times grosser, and they've probably been there for 2 weeks. And I mean, think about like when you're in a hotel, you just kind of you don't maybe clean up as well as you would have at home. You throw the stuff in the garbage, but you leave the bed undone, you leave kind of stuff everywhere because you're only there for a day or two. Now imagine that for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that makes sense. The most recent time I stayed in a Super 8, and I don't know how many times I have, but the only time where I've like booked my own room at a Super 8, it was in Valdosta, Georgia, I believe.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't. Is that a bad area? I know you're familiar with Georgia.
I don't know that it's a. So I don't know it well enough to know if it's like a completely bad. Like there are nice parts of it, but there's also like there's some sketch it's south. Like have you ever seen that Family Guy where Stewie is on the porch playing the banjo like he's in Deliverance within just a diaper? That's what you can run into in Valdosta, Georgia, a little bit.
So I didn't realize I had booked this particular Super 8. So it was a Super 8 that combined with a Days Inn, which honestly, I don't even know what the point of it was. It looked like it was the same hotel on both sides, but you had to enter from the outside. Like that was the only, and those, I mean, maybe they're just as safe, if not the same amount of safety. It just depends on, I guess, the protocol. But I was nervous because I didn't realize I'd booked a hotel that it wasn't like, interior entrance, if that makes sense, entry. But overall, though, the room itself that we had was clean. The bed sheets were clean. The bathroom was clean, which I wasn't particularly expecting whenever I arrived. But, it is one of those things. Mitchell, you're celebrating.
The
Did
Hoosiers,
Indiana pull it
baby.
off? Did they pull it off?
There's 22 seconds left. They battled all the way back. They were tied at 70, or they were up 71-69. This has all been happening in like the last 3 minutes, so that's why I've been a little jumbled. Ohio State guy goes up. Oh, let's go. Goes up. And a little floater that Khalil Ware blocks to half court, and Galloway's going to get a run out, but they called it a goaltend. It was like right at the apex, could have gone either way. They called it a goaltend to go up 71 or tie 71-71. Indiana doesn't make it. Ohio State scores down 2 with 40 seconds. Big shot, Anthony Leal, 3-ball to go up 74-73. 20 seconds left in the game. Anthony Leal, Mr. Basketball, in the great state of Indiana. We just make them different. You just make
While
them different.
I can't remember if this happened at the beginning of the show or before the show, but Dustin, you said Ohio State notorious for giving up leads.
Yep.
I want you guys to know this is shaping up 100% for a last-second shot that sends me into a dark pit of despair.
I hope it happens right when Dustin's doing his rap, because that's what we're about ready to head into as we put a bow on this episode.
That would
My
be
name
fantastic.
is Dustin. Don't call
Dustin,
me
are you ready to play us out before I close us out?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on. I'm still working a little bit.
This has been a very not that the show has been different than
Get on
normal,
it!
but like
Get
we've been doing different things. We added the punishment.
Oh my God, he
Mitchell
just
is
tore his knee.
literally he's watching and reacting live to an Indiana
Oh
basketball
my
game
gosh.
that I'm not sure how
This
many
is
of our
worst case
listeners
scenario.
care about.
This is worst case scenario. This is worst case. I cannot make this up. Cannot make this up. Can't make it up. Indiana gets a steal. It's a run out. Khalil Ware is leading the pack. He's going for a dunk, two-handed dunk. Steps on his left knee buckles. He's going to be done for the year. That's an ACL.
That's the name. That's
sure.
the wow. That's terrible. That's
He's going to win the game with the dunk. There's 2 seconds left. He could have just dribbled it. He went for a dunk, which I love. Steps on his left knee. Knee hyperextends. He is walking, but you can walk on a torn ACL.
Ugh.
I cannot believe what I'm witnessing. This is what a roller coaster. I'm sorry. I'm hijacking your moment right now, Dustin.
This is not. I tell you what, this is not my moment.
Well, next time I just need to know better to not have us record during the game.
I think it's more fun. This is a live reaction. Oh my gosh, it's so bad in slow motion.
I do
it's a
like
Willis
this
McGahee knee.
It adds a new element, something we haven't had before.
It does, but like
the audience guessing.
I guess.
He was gonna dunk that.
I guess I worry like how many people that are listening are Indiana fans and give a shit.
I think people like misery. I don't like.
I think they do too.
Do you want? This is where you've got a
misery loves company.
I'm giving you.
I don't know if they like misery, but they like to be around other people who are miserable.
I watch or I listen to Pardon My Take, the Barstool podcast, very popular sports podcast. They cheer for the Bears and the Commanders. Couldn't care less about those two teams. But when they're sad about some stupid thing that their team does, it is hysterical. And Indiana basketball is that. I mean, you cannot – that was the Bad News Bears, what I just watched. That was a roller coaster. Get a steal, throw it to your biggest – I guess most athletic person, and have him tear his ACL going to dunk the ball.
Do you really think he tore his ACL right there? I mean, I didn't see it, obviously.
He's walking better than I guessed he would have, but I mean, you'll see in the replay, his knee bends the wrong direction when he goes to plant. It's like the biggest hyperextension I've ever seen.
This probably isn't worth going into detail on this podcast, but I think Indiana needs a different athletic trainer.
Tim Garl,
not athletic trainer, whatever Cliff Marshall's position is, because Indiana has had so many injuries, and I feel like nothing's changed.
All I know is Tim Garl took care of me when I was at Indiana basketball camp as a young tyke. When we were doing, I don't know why I remember this so vividly, but he's just a name in the program that's been there forever. So you see him and you recognize him, and when you're in third grade, you think he's a celebrity. And we were doing that drill that is so stupid that you would jump over the ball to be quick. And I'm in third grade, so I'm not very coordinated. I landed on the ball and landed on my foot, rolled my ankle so bad, tipped over the ball, smashed my head on the court. And the first thing I remember is Tim Garl's face looking at me like, "You okay, buddy?" and just help me up. He didn't even he just shake it off.
Did you say I've fallen and I can't get up?
I couldn't say anything because my head smashed into the floor. My eyes were crossed. He's like, tough it out. And he was right. But still, that's my Tim Garl story.
Okay, I think I have this down. I've got 6 lines, John. I've got
6 bars.
Now, the problem is that, bars, because apparently lines aren't a thing. But I don't know if it's going to flow well with this beat. So
it's okay.
Are they aggressive? Are they aggressive lines, or is this like a
this is very much like I just thought of things that rhymed, and this is where we.
So this is white guy rap. I like this.
This is white guy rap.
This is our new segment.
I'm teetering on the verge of clear guy rap. That's how white it is.
Transparent guy rap. All right, here we go. I think without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Dustin Schutte. Let it kick back in here in a moment.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I gotta let it go. I gotta be like B Rabbit here and let it just kind of go. Get a feel for my rhythm. Okay. With John and Mitchell, this is Out of Touch. Spitting isn't my game. I don't do it much. I lost the town name game. Ain't nobody else but myself to blame. Don't want to get kicked out the gym, JJ? Think about Marriott for your next stay.
I love that it didn't go with the beat at all. You just read
I know.
it.
So I feel like that was read like as a poem.
There was no chance it was going to go with that beat.
That was poetry slam right there.
I loved it. It was pretty good. I will give you credit.
I wish I had a clap button.
We'll clap. Dustin, by far, most creative and stuff like that. And I'm calling to mind his recruiting pitch to me to come play football at Indiana from a couple years ago that we may have to resurface on the TikTok.
We'll bring that up again at some point. Because that was a good thing. That was a good.
Do you know how many people that I haven't talked to in 10 years when that got released looked at me and were like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever heard.
Was one of the most fun things I think I've ever done.
It was awesome. And that's a little teaser. Follow us on TikTok. That's where we're going to put it.
Oh,
that's right. That needs to go on TikTok. And Dustin, you need to get on TikTok, by the way. You're not on TikTok, are you?
We should put this rap beat on TikTok.
It will. Trust me. I post 3 TikToks a week now. I post more on TikTok than I do with the regular stuff.
All right. I am on TikTok. I just never use it. So I'm going to.
I need to. Yeah, you need to. So follow us at Out of Touch Media. Again, usually put things on there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, clips from the show as you would expect. So check that out. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, soon to be on Apple Podcasts. Also, hit the hotline if you dare, 502-830-9195. And maybe give us your own bars. Maybe you can write your own rap and play it over the show. I'm
sending a little creative on
I'm sending a special request out to ND Hater 1. If you listen within the next 2 or 3 weeks and you got some bars, share them. We will get redemption for that night in 2009 or 10, whatever year it was, and we didn't win the money.
I would love for him to rap exactly what he did on that night if he knows what it was. I think that'd be fun.
Sounds like there wasn't a lot lot
I remember one line that he had when somebody. Okay, we'll close out with this. Someone was heckling him while he was trying to rap. And this is what I say when I say he's the most quick-witted person I probably know. He turns without missing a beat and goes, "Hey, you in the peanut gallery, I don't do this for a salary."
That might be the widest thing anybody could say.
Hey, that's fantastic. That's in the moment, playing to the crowd in honor of Toby Keith. Play us out.
That's right. There it is. Very, very out of touch episode. Almost said out of place, but the damn show's called Out of Touch, so I might as well lean into it, right?
And the Hoosiers won.
The Hoosiers won.
They won.
We started in agony, and I guess we're ending in joy. So thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Hopefully, man, if you all put up with this bullshit every single week, hats off to you. And sorry for cussing, but sometimes I feel like that's what I'm doing with this podcast. But thanks for listening or watching. We'll talk to you next time.